Good evening, good evening, good evening. Sorry about that. As usual, technology. Hopefully, we're waiting for Akua, our guest, Nati, to join us shortly. My apologies for the late start, and thank you for joining us today. Where we're going to be talking a bit about, exploring opportunities, and this time we're looking at it from a non-HR practitioner's or a non-HR professional's point of view. So it'll be very interesting. Hopefully, Akua will join us shortly, and then we can start the session. Yeah. Okay, hopefully she'll join shortly. Apologies for this. Hopefully, Akua will join us shortly, and we'll take it from there. Okay, looks like she's having a bit of a problem. So, I guess in the meantime, we can pose some questions that you may have. I know obviously the information the person has or Ikea has, she hasn't shared it yet, but looking at the title, you can pose your questions as whilst we wait for Ikea. For some reason, I think she says she can't seem to see us. Roma, would you call Ikea for me, please? She says she can't see us. There she is. She just joined, but Ikea, I need her to request to join in. Fantastic. There she is. Hello, young lady. Finally, we
That
got
was
here.
close.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you as well?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm fine, thank you. You know how technology, we're all trying to get used to this whole Instagram live and everything
Well,
else.
this is
So.
officially my first Instagram live, just so you know, for the record.
Oh, well
Never done.
done.
Well, to be fair, I've
Mm,
done it while I was videoing other people, but I
okay,
didn't. But it wasn't me with someone else the way we are doing it now. So my
I see.
virginity is broken.
I broke it, right?
Yes,
How are
we can
you?
put that down. I'm well, thank you, Jen. I'm well,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, fantastic. Well, I'm so excited. You have no idea. I said to Carrie, I need to do this because, I want to learn quite a lot more from you. So I'm very happy that you're here today. And hopefully we're going to make some impact. So I think without wasting any more time, I guess we can go straight into our session. It's going to be a bit more conversation, and I'm looking forward to your insight into a lot of things. So I won't bore down I guess, the general public with who you are. So just to start off with, I think I'll throw the button to you to just tell them briefly a little bit about who you are, and then we can take the rest of the questions from there.
Who am I? I'm a 28-year-old girl. That's a good place to start. Anyway, my name is Akua Usunate, and I run an advertising agency. It's called Ogilvy and Mather. I've worked in advertising most of my life. The first thing I ever started doing was I taught for a couple of years. So I worked as
Mm,
a teaching assistant and I did home support for quite a few years. But
okay,
so that's my second love. But advertising is my first love.
okay.
I do quite a bit in advertising and PR, And now I'm learning digital as well from my teams.
Okay.
And that's it. I have two lovely daughters, Jada and Janelle, who hound me all the time. And then what else do I want to say about myself? And then I do a bit of coaching here and there. And that's my life. Yes.
Fantastic. And you forgot that you're the guru in strategy.
It's nice for someone to remind me of something that I do. So I in advertising, my main thing is I'm a strategic planner, right? And it's actually, when I say advertising is my first love, I actually mean that advertising in terms of strategy is actually my first love. A couple of days ago, I was telling one of the girls who's my current planner. So we're working on a campaign together. And I said, you know what? I actually love this more than running a business. Because running a business means you're constantly looking at numbers, you're constantly looking at revenue, you're constantly looking at, people issues, and it's constant troubleshooting, right?
Yeah.
And for a change, I'm looking at strategy, which is just pure thinking and problem solving that are not money based. So I love that.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for that. Somebody just said they would like to join your agency. So let's keep an eye out for that.
I will keep an eye out.
Yeah. So, Akua, how have you been? We've all started we started 2020 with the Vim. We had all the plans, and suddenly in February, the COVID hits us. Things have changed. The new normal is here with us. Everybody's trying to adjust to it. So let's just take your, regional director role hat off, and just generally as yourself, how has it been for you, the journey right through to now, and how are you balancing the family life with working at home and stuff like that?
So I think that for almost all of us, right, COVID's been really hard. For me personally, it started off and I thought, this is going to go away. So I don't know if you remember in March, it was like, this is something that happens to only old people, and young people are not dying from it. And there were all these stories, and this whole thing, we've all watched this evolve, right? And so I didn't start off in a panic, right?
Yeah.
But by week 4, you would find that it was getting harder and harder.
Okay.
And businesses were having to recalibrate, right?
Yeah.
For me, the first thing is just even the business and making sure that the business is doing well. That has been a journey in itself, just making sure it's sustainable, right? Because it's not a massive business. It's an agency. There's a big agency, don't get me wrong. But when you look at what the Ghana operation is, just making it sustainable, making sure you're able to service your clients, regardless of the fact that you're not actually physically present in the office. The second big shift for me was just the whole concept of working at home. So being able to manage the teams, but also managing yourself and balancing your work-life balance out, right?
How do you do that? Because I can't seem to get my head around it.
That's been a nightmare. And I'll be very honest with you. I'm actually working longer hours than I used to work.
Because you don't get the distractions from everybody popping into your office. Yeah.
You don't get those distractions, but if you're an early bird like me, you're up behind your computer at 7, right? And then...
Are you sure it's not earlier than that? Are you sure it's not earlier than that?
Well, I like to keep it to 7. I don't. The reality sometimes is earlier, because if I have a call with Nairobi, for example, sometimes I'm actually beside my computer by, let's say, 5:30 or even 6, right? So there is that. The other thing though is that because everybody knows you are home, people are very intrusive and not actually sensitive to one's time. So what ends up happening is that you will get a request at 8 o'clock, and you would look at it, right? When if you're working in the office, you'll be driving into work, you'll be driving back from home. So there's a time when nobody's actually expecting you to respond to anything. But now it's almost like you're supposed to be working responsive 24 hours a day. I mean, give or take, right?
Yeah.
And so that's also been hard to adjust to, right?
Okay.
Because if you are a bit of a type A person like me, as soon as the email comes, you want to be able to respond to it. And what that means is that I'm not being able to stop.
Yeah.
So that would be my challenge. But I think that I'm reining myself in the last couple of weeks. I'm beginning to rein myself in more. And that whole self-awareness, just even from reading people's experiences around working from home and so on, has actually made a huge difference.
And what about the girls? Balancing it with the girls in the house. I mean, I know the girls are a bit older, but you know, now they're not
So
in
just
school. And they've got
as we were
to
talking now, I had one of them with a big sheet of paper, and they've written a note on the piece of paper, and they're trying to.
right.
She's almost like waving a union flag at me and saying, "Mommy, I need this," and I've completely blocked her out, right?
Right, right.
Because I'm on Instagram Live. I'm not supposed to be looking at your
Exactly.
request. But
Exactly.
I think the good thing is they're older, and they were
Yeah.
doing online school, and they
Okay.
were quite good. So they settled in very quickly, and we're all busy, right?
Okay.
We share. I share space with one of them, and the other one has a separate space.
Okay.
And so that's been fine, and they're busy till 3 o'clock. So
Okay.
in between, I might dash and go and make lunch because it's just the three of us at home currently.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
what you find is it's been really, really nice, and it's been good
Fantastic.
bonding time, and me
Yes.
also getting to know my kids a lot better, right?
Mm,
So I
mm,
actually can tell, even though I felt I knew them, I've discovered so many things about them in the last couple of months. So that's been an
I
upside.
see. Okay, so that's
Yeah,
been a good one for you then, I guess. Okay. How
it
about
has.
managing, before we delve into the real exploring opportunities from an HR perspective, from a
Yeah,
non-HR person's perspective, how about
yeah.
managing your team remotely? What's the productivity? How has the productivity been like, or what have you put in place? I guess you could perhaps share a little bit of what you've put in place to ensure that things are running smoothly.
So we generally the agencies work based on projects, right?
Mm,
And when we started off, the productivity was really great. And
I
it was
see.
great purely because it was new, everybody was refreshed, everybody was energized,
Mm,
and everybody was bringing their A game to the table. Um, as time has gone on, you'd realize that you think that it would get better, but I think
yeah.
some level of general fatigue has setting. You
Uh-huh.
find that also, we are social beings as human beings. So
Of
that
course.
inability to go out also begins to
Mm,
take its toll on especially the guys who live alone, because I have quite a few
mm,
guys who live alone by themselves.
okay.
And they're creative, so there's always a
Mm,
need for social interaction. So the last couple of
I
weeks
see.
has been tough for some of them, right?
Okay.
Where that lack of social interaction has not. So one of the things that we've tried to do is say people should check on other people, right? So kind of
Mm-hmm.
keep that cycle of communication going, but you can't
Right.
enforce it.
Of
We've also
course.
tried to do a few check-ins. We've had one we've had two actually, all agency groupings where we kind of get on a call and they play around a bit and they
Okay.
talk a bit, and then that's it. They were
Okay.
interesting, but you find that not everybody is also interactive. So maybe we
Mm,
should do more of those. But we're so
I
busy
think
chasing
so.
one brief to the other that we don't always do it. But I think that the teams are energized. They are
Mm,
working extremely hard.
mm.
Sometimes you might pick a few slackers who have to deliver something and say my lights went off when maybe the lights didn't really go off.
Uh-huh.
You know
Uh-huh.
what I mean? But generally, I must say that the team has done incredibly well working from home to be able to
Okay.
keep our business sustained. Yes.
I see. Fantastic. So let's come to the business of the day, one would call it. When I thought of this particular topic and I thought, okay, exploring opportunities, there's a lot of talks and a lot of, articles and a lot of motivational messages on, take advantage of this time to reset yourself, to look at different opportunities and stuff like that. And I think when I spoke to you about, us talking and delving deeper into this, we wanted to look at it
Yeah.
from a different perspective to what the general public or what we've been reading currently. So
Yes.
if I want us to go into the area of exploring opportunities in this current status that we're in, which angle would you want us to take it from or look at it from, to the usual, not to the usual ones that we've been seeing nowadays?
So I think that the first opportunity, so I'll talk about the inward opportunities, right,
Mm,
for an employee, and I'll talk about, so maybe two inward opportunities for you as someone who works in a business, and then I'll talk about it from the business side quite quickly. So the first
okay.
thing is just personal development, right? So
Mm,
this is a time where, in as much as a lot of companies are busy and there's a lot going on, a lot
mm-hmm,
of employees also have a lot more flexibility than they used to have.
mm,
And what this means is that maybe it's a time to do a lot of personal development.
Okay.
And we all have a whole stack of books that we promise ourselves to read and we never read. And the year comes to the end and you realize that you plan to read, well, a book a month and you've read none, you know?
Okay. Yeah.
So the first
I've
thing
got stacks
is
of it.
you got stacks of books. I have God knows how many books that I would love to read, but I never do, right?
I
So the
know.
thinking here is maybe this is a time to begin to develop yourself personally, which is reading all the books that you've planned to read that you haven't read. It could be as simple as taking a short course, right? To kind of upgrade whatever your current skill sets are. It could be as simple as going into having a coaching session, right, where you're beginning to talk to someone who's going to help you through your career choices and so on. But it is a very good time to kind of take time out, carve a bit of time out for you as an individual, and begin to say, what are the things that I could do to make me better? So that's the first thing.
But again, then before you go on to the second one, is that usually when people want to do that, there's a little bit of a fear factor behind it of, you know, should I take the leap? Shouldn't I take the leap? Should I do this? You know, you always have that at the back of your mind, and it sort of puts you off in actually moving forward.
Right. It does, but you know, you've got so much time on your hands. And lots of people, I mean, yes, a lot of people are working twice as hard, right? But you also have quite a bit of personal space. So one does need to be intentional. And that fear will come with anything, right? It will come with trying something new. But if you look at it that it could be as small as reading a book, you realize that it's just incremental change, that things that you're doing to just help yourself as an individual. So that fear will always exist, right? Do I really want to go and do this MBA course online? Or do I want to go and do this, for example, this digital course to kind of learn about digital marketing? That fear will be there whether you'll be successful and so on. But it's just kind of beginning to work through it and doing it in very bite-sized chunks.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah.
So just going on to the next one that I've thought about. It's also a time for introspection, right?
Okay.
So in my mind, I love teaching, I love advertising, but a part of me also feels like, is advertising, and I hope none of my bosses is watching this, but is advertising what I want to do indefinitely, right? Or anybody who knows any of my bosses. And I've always had a really big thing for the human mind, right? So things around psychology, things around behavioral change and consumer behavior, things around how people's minds work, right? And that's where my interest in the whole thing around coaching has been born from. And so a part of me kind of feels like at some point in time, I would want to do something in behavioral patterns, right? And what drives people and what the things that kind of motivate people and so on. And I think that for a lot of us, we need to kind of spend a bit of time working out, what do I really want to do? What am I passionate about? What do I love doing, right? And within that sphere, maybe you're a bank teller and that's something that you like doing, but maybe you like baking, or maybe you like teaching. And so what it's almost a time to kind of begin to look deep within and realizing that life is very fragile and things can change at the drop of a dime. So what are the things I like doing, and would I want to consider going into another career area, or would I want to recalibrate? So that's another big thing that I'm thinking that a lot of people can begin to look at. And it's not about, but no, you know, we have children to feed and school fees to pay. So you're not going to suddenly decide that you're going to be doing something completely weird, but something that helps you as well.
Okay, that's a very good point as well, you know, as an individual. But if we look at the other angle with regards to, you know, things that have been debunked, about this whole thing of, you know, working from home, buying stuff online and stuff like that. What's your view on that in terms of exploring opportunities in those areas?
So from a business perspective, you know, I've been trying to get a lot of my clients to drive an e-commerce agenda. It's not been easy because, like we talked about, the fear of going in an uncharted area, somewhere that you've never done before, right? But the truth is, we've been pushed forward 5 years through this COVID, right? Nobody could have thought working from home would work, but it is working. And you find that from an e-commerce perspective, we all need, and a lot of us are already selling things on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
But it needs to be done in a more structured fashion, especially for big corporates, right? So if you
Right.
if you had, for example, a company that sold consumer beverages or something, the ability to make orders online is a big thing. So for just even clients and for big corporates, that's a huge opportunity that is currently untapped. I think the best people who've kind of done a good job at it are people who are selling things on Jumia, but even that also
Right.
has its own limitations in terms of who's going to be buying off an e-commerce platform. But I also think that as individuals, there is just that opportunity to understand it from a more technical perspective, right? Just beginning to understand what is this made up of? What are the risks? What are the loopholes? And beginning to build those skill sets. So that's one of the things that some of the guys on my team are doing. So I have a particular lady who's now currently, I said to her, you're going to be my e-commerce champion. So suddenly she's a planner, but she also now knows that she needs to begin to understand e-commerce so that when we go into the client conversation, she's the one who's leading the conversation and she's the one who is kind of the expert in that domain. So I think that e-commerce is a big deal. We just need to take it a lot more seriously than we have so far.
Okay. I mean, that's a very interesting perspective. But then one would be thinking, okay, there's this idea that, as a high performer, businesses cannot function very well without high performers. And I think COVID has given us a different perspective to that. What's your take on it?
No one's job is ever 100% secure. And I think that is one thing that has been very, very big on my view and why I take my work seriously to a certain extent, right? You'd realize that there are lots of people who've lost their jobs in the last couple of months just purely because the business couldn't sustain them. And it's not because of their capability or their ability, because they're high performers, right? It's just that sometimes, and also because the business needs have changed. So if you take a business where everything was done physically, and now everything has moved into the digital space, or 80% of the transactions have been moved to digital, suddenly you realize that people who might have been doing well on the shop floor will not necessarily have jobs anymore. So I think that COVID has taught us that everything can change in the blink of an eye, right? And so even as a high performer in an organization, I think it's really important to be very self-aware and be as nimble and agile and also as versatile as possible so that you are constantly relevant in whatever sphere you are. But on a personal note, I also think that people should also appreciate their jobs, because I find that having a job that you don't particularly like is actually a better problem to have than not having a job at all. Unless you have a trust fund or you have a
lot of people would disagree with you, though.
No, that's what I'm saying. Unless you have a trust fund. I'm not talking about a job that you're miserable in, or you're being abused in, or a job that you that challenges your mental capability, right? Or sorry, I mean, like that has an effect on your psyche, because we know that there are certain bosses who just pretty much abuse their teams, right?
Right.
I'm talking about having a job that you like. It's better to, and you are challenged in, right? I'm challenged now because I had a digital acceleration plan that has been kicked into 5th gear, and I thought I had time. I was in 2nd gear and I was cruising, but suddenly I know that I need to develop my e-commerce product. Suddenly I have to develop my social content product, right? So suddenly something that I was in 2nd gear in and I was just cruising, I'm in 5th gear now. And that's why I feel like we need to be appreciative of what we have and not take it for granted.
Fantastic. That's a very good information, a very good perspective to figure, to understand it from. But in terms of, technology, talking again about exploring opportunities, a lot of companies or even individuals, and you touched briefly a bit on that when you were talking about personal development, where a lot of companies felt that we couldn't do a lot of businesses online, but now we're being forced, to move into that direction. And even as an individual, you have to sort of get with the program. And so in terms of exploring opportunities in that way, what sort of views or what ideas do you have as far as that is concerned that perhaps will be beneficial to our public or the viewers who are watching us now?
So anyone who's already doing some level of consulting, right, on digital acceleration, this is a time for you.
Okay.
And you'd realize that different businesses are at different levels in their digital acceleration journey. So some of them will be at the beginning where they're kind of testing the waters and seeing how things will go, right? And some of them are already in it. And maybe they're not necessarily putting the right investment behind it. When I talk about digital acceleration, it's just about how you digitize a business from end to end. So from just even your product to how the product is delivered and how you drive transactions, whether it's online or offline, and how you even manage your stocks, how you advertise, how you create awareness about your product and everything. So it's the whole value chain of the product, right? And you'd realize that it's a whole process for a company to become fully digitized. It's a whole process. So a big opportunity I see is anyone who is in this area being able to identify the businesses that need it, who need to be sped up from where they currently are. I think it's absolutely important that they begin to approach some of these companies and make a very, very conscious effort to help them along their digital acceleration journey. So that would be a huge opportunity that I see personally today.
Okay. What about from an individual perspective point of view? You've talked about from the business perspective point of view. How can we tailor it into the individual perspective? And just before you answer that, for our viewers, thank you very much for joining us, and those who are joining, thank you very much for that. And please put your questions up for Akua as we're going along, and then we can answer the questions in between the session. So, Akua, back to what you just explained with regards to the business. How can an individual how can it be applied to an individual as far as exploring opportunities in the digital space or in general is concerned?
So the first thing I would say is, for example, there are a lot of young people, right, who understand the digital world better than most. And it's important that they formalize some of these things, right? So you realize that a lot of the thoughts are very, very unstructured. So just being able to, and it could be as simple as taking a course, right? But being able to structure whatever capability you have within the digital world and develop a product for it. So recently, for example, I had someone who approached us who had said, listen, I want to develop a product that allows you to sell an app to your clients for digital content creation, right? And it was a brilliant idea. Are there such apps out there? Yes, there are, right? But they had interesting slants to it, right? Because he had kind of made it very locally relevant to our Ghanaian context in terms of what kind of imagery is there. So there's a whole product development bank, and you don't need to be able to code yourself, right? You could always have an idea, structure it right, and get people to actually implement that idea for you or to buy into the idea. So that's one big opportunity that I see. I think that social content is a big thing now, and all brands are diving into that. So individuals who have that capability, who are able to create content, who are nimble around that, it's a matter of kind of collaborating and being able to provide a service like that for whether it's corporate, whether it's for small businesses or medium businesses. That's also a potentially very interesting area in my view.
It's good. Okay, sorry to cut in your thoughts there, but it's very important, and I like that pointers with regards to obviously, taking advantage of that. And if it's an individual who wants to do that, then you can do so. But for somebody like the average Joe who probably may not have a very strong network, how could they go about in ensuring that, they have that experience and they could perhaps put it out there, but then they don't know how to go about it? Because I feel that a lot of people have a lot of great ideas, as you're saying, but it's just how to move it a step further, whether it's using a particular network that they're in, and maybe their network is not as strong as it's supposed to be. So in that case, what sort of advice would you give to that person? Then we can come back to other pointers that you have.
So I find that young people are very bold today. And I
Are
find
you
that
sure?
that
Okay.
no, they are. And I'll tell you why I
Okay.
say that.
Yeah.
Genevieve, when you were growing up or when I was growing up, it was about finding a job and having an income and staying in that job.
Yeah.
I know 24-year-olds who get up and quit their jobs and they have no clue how they're going to live the following day, and they've quit their job. That takes balls, right? And there's a certain sense of freedom that they look for, right? So they want to be independent, they want to be able to do what they want, and so on. I think that maybe it's time to take some of that confidence and use it as a tool in their toolbox, right? To kind of drive their capability. And the way I see it is, if you have a product or if you have something to offer, you need to talk about it, because it's not going to sell itself in a corner. And it's using the same social tools that they have. So whether it's a Facebook, it's an Instagram, using those social tools to talk about their capabilities, rather than talking about shoes and cars. Well, then again, I have a friend who would disagree on the car bits, because he's what I call a car bit, but he makes money from it, if I must say. But the thinking here is using those social media tools that we currently have as a way of selling capabilities that these young people have. That's one. I think it's also a thing of packaging, right? So if you have a skill set, if you have a certain basic capability, or if you have a product, or if you have something that you think can add value to a certain business, sometimes it's packaging that packaging that properly, right? So even just how you do your PowerPoint or your deck, right?
Okay.
And yes, I know that the story of walking into an office and trying to sell something is old, and it's not always easy. But I think that it's also taking advantage of what I call 6 degrees of separation, right? So there's a thing about how. So 6 degrees of separation is between me and Barack Obama are 6 people who can get me to Barack Obama. Believe that.
Oh, I see.
Right?
Oh, wow. I think you should repeat that, because this is the very first time I've heard this. So 6 degrees
so
what?
6 degrees of separation. And what it is pretty much is between any 2 people, there are 6 people who can connect them. So if you wanted to meet whoever it is that you would want to meet, right? Obama, right? Or Michelle, right? The thinking is that there are 6 people who can get you there, right? And so it's just beginning to look at, it will not be a direct network, right? And it could be someone, it's your cousin who is a PA to somebody who met somebody at a dinner somewhere and says, oh, I remember that Sewa said she met this person. Okay, call that person. Oh, that person says, oh, no, you can call this person, and that is it. So beginning to be more intentional about that could also help you sell your ideas or sell whatever it is that you have currently.
Okay. So I want to take you back to being intentional, because you mentioned 2 things. For those who have joined, thank you very much. The topic we're diving into exploring opportunities beyond, the careers, and obviously looking at it from a business perspective and also a personal development perspective. You talked 2 things earlier on about being intentional when it came to an individual in terms of exploring opportunities. How can one, because we hear a lot of these jargons, be intentional, make yourself aware, all sorts that comes in. And sometimes it's very difficult to practicalize it. What does being intentional in terms of exploring opportunity mean to you, Akua?
So a lot of the time we expect things to happen for us, and we expect things to come to us, right? Or we are not willing to put in the amount of effort required to move from point A to B.
I see.
If you want to lose weight, there are so many ways to lose weight. You can either take drugs, you can exercise, you can eat healthy. There are a whole number of things that you could be doing, right, to lose weight. Now, what you find is that you could do it for 3 days, you lose a bit of weight and be able to fit in that dress, and you'll be right back at square one. Being intentional is deciding that this is not a 9-day wonder. This is something that I need to do over time, and being willing to commit yourself, your personal self, bring your whole self to the table, commit your time and commit your resources, right? So using the diet analogy, it could be as simple that I'm going to eat healthy. I'm going to eat at the right time. And eating healthy might mean you have to cook the meals yourself. You have to do things differently, right? And so just in terms of your career, being intentional means that you need to set a goal and you're very clear, this is where I want to be in, say, 6 months or 3 months, right? And with that done, you need to begin to say, these are the 10 steps or these are the 10 things I need to get there, and actively work at knocking each of them off. And that requires you, it's almost like meeting a guy and wanting to have a relationship with a guy. It won't just happen overnight, right? You kind of put a bit of effort into it. And it's just the same thing as putting an effort into your career and how you develop yourself. So that's what being intentional is for me. And also being self-aware, right, of what you're. So, for example, I have a girl who knows she's not an early morning person. I mean, she's a 9 o'clock person, right? So when she has something, she's very intentional. She'll set an alarm. She'll make sure she's ready for it. So even if she's late waking up, she's able to do it, right? So it's just that self-awareness that helps you work towards a goal. Yeah.
Okay. But currently, there's a lot of mental and emotional feelings going on all over the place. You've talked about a lot of things, being committed to time, having making things intentional and everything else. How can one go beyond, the whole mental, emotional, physical draining process we're all going through to get that vim, to start that process? Is there anything that one can do?
Other than going for therapy?
Well, not everybody can afford therapy, but the truth of the matter is a lot of people are struggling, right? And you can tell people have a lot of ideas, and you've given very great tips on how they can start and everything else. But sometimes I feel like the body is willing to do it, but the mind is just not allowing it to do it. And I'm just trying to find what is the kind of coping thing, or what will push, or what would help somebody to be able to take that first step?
I wish I had an answer, like a one-size-fits-all answer for that. I don't.
Okay.
I think that it will be different things for different people. For some, it's just having someone who believes in the idea and is willing to support. It doesn't even have to be financially. That says, you know what, Akua, this is a great idea. Go ahead and do it, right?
Right. Okay.
And for someone else, it would be having a plan. Because I know people who, when they don't see 5 steps ahead, they just don't move. They're not able to physically even move, right? So sometimes it's having a plan. I wish I had a clear tip that says, this is hard, and so what are you able to do to kind of move from point A to B? I think that for someone else as well, just in terms of how do you actually get up and go, it's just the awareness that what they're doing will make a difference, right? So you find a lot of young people now want to do things that have an impact, like have a positive impact.
Right.
And that's actually a good thing. So just being able to identify that what you're doing is going to make a difference. But to be honest with you, I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all answer for that. It will be different things for different people.
Okay. There was one time we had a conversation, and I remember this word, and I will never forget it. And you made mention of being useful in every single situation that you find yourself in. And I want to link it to exploring opportunity somehow. And, a lot of people have lost their jobs. People are still job hunting. People want different things.
How do you remember being useful?
Well, you are one of the people that obviously will... I pay attention to you, by the way. I mean, we have very deep conversations, that. And, it's one of the things that has always stuck with me. And I always share it when I get the opportunity. But I'm just thinking, as you're talking, how can one be very useful in the midst of this whole chaotic situations that we find ourselves in, that we don't even know what's going to happen in the next couple of months, even the next 2-3 years?
So I'll just give quick context on my whole concept of being useful. So one of the first videos I watched when I became a planner was a senior planner. I think at the time he worked for Publicis Ogilvy. I can't remember now, forgive me. And he says, as a planner, your one job is to be useful.
Okay.
And being useful means solving problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he talked extensively about how you might not have the answer to everything, but
Mm-hmm.
you need to be able to know how to find that answer, right?
Okay.
And that is one thing that has stuck with me a lot as well, which
Okay.
is wherever you are today, you need to be working in overdrive and be exceptionally useful. And useful means doing your job and doing it exceptionally well, but also being able to identify other opportunities, being able to identify areas that you can provide support in and solutions, right? So I'll give you a very basic example of someone who's been very useful. So there's a guy on my team, right? Who would come and say, for example, oh, Akua, you know what? We are making X amount on this, but I think that if we could do one A, B, C, D, we could do even better, right? So he's actually looked at his current circumstances and is beginning to say, what could I be doing differently?
Right.
And that for me that's being very useful, right? It could be picking up, I mean, a lot of people kind of think it's straitjacket. This is my role. I'll do my role and I'll do nothing more. But just that ability to stretch yourself a little bit, because it's a bit of a difficult time for everybody, businesses, individuals, and so on. So being able to stretch yourself out a little bit and saying, you know what, this is not my core role, but if I can lend a hand, I will lend a hand, right? So that is also an element of being useful, you know. And I think that everyone would need to do a bit of their homework within their current circumstances and say, how can I be useful both to myself in my personal development and within the work context that I currently operate in?
Okay. That's a very good pointers to give when it comes to that. So as you're talking, I'm thinking, okay, so Akua is the regional director for Ogilvy. We like that. She's also a strategic planner, obviously, which is linking to her current role. And she also does a bit of mentoring and coaching. And I'm just wondering, if somebody wants you to coach or mentor them, is it from the angle of strategic thinking, or is it generally, if you can mentor somebody, is it more on their personal life? Is it more on their career side? Or what is it like when it comes to peer coaching someone or mentoring someone?
So I have found that it always
And by the way, I want to be
with...
on your mentoring list. So I should be the next
Genevieve, you don't need mentoring. So I'll tell you how this has worked, right? It always starts professionally, right? But people are a combination of things, right? So if you take anyone who works in the office, you have problems. But we tend to assume that you have personal problems and you have things to deal with, whether it's your home, your kids, your husband paying bills, your parents who are aging, whatever it is, right? We all have a mixed match of problems, but we don't realize that other people have the same problems. And what I find is when you start the mentoring journey, you realize that so many facets of one's life impacts their jobs, right? So what happens ultimately is that it's not a straitjacket mentoring around just your job, but you'd find that your personal life is interwoven into it and the choices that you're making and so on. So to be honest with you, it always runs into all sorts of different directions, and it also depends on what the mentee is willing to open up about, right? So I just find that it goes into different facets of their lives.
I see. So do you currently have people that you're mentoring at the moment? I've just seen Akua Carey saying, I want to be on a mentoring list too. So do you currently have, people that you're mentoring at the moment, or,
I currently have 4.
Oh,
I've
wow.
been a very naughty mentor in the last 4 months.
Okay.
But normally the way it's structured is we would have a monthly check-in. And in between, if you need anything, you would message and then we would have a conversation, right? So, but pretty much it's a monthly check-in, and it's normally an hour to 2 hours, depending on some of them are some of the guys that tend to be a bit closed off. So it takes a lot of, prodding to get, to kind of have the discussions. But yes, it's just a monthly check-in and on a case by case basis. Yes.
And I guess it's free for now.
It is free. It is free.
Somebody, Kezia,
So
then Daniel
I actually
says,
at a point in time, had a criteria. So there's an essay, and then there's a thing that you fill out. Because there are also people who just say, "I want you to mentor me just for saying sake," right? And it's not because they are being intentional about it. It's just about the association, right? So it's also important for me to understand why you need to be mentored, and then that makes me decide whether or not to take it up.
Okay, fantastic. So I think for those who have just joined us, thank you very much for that. Please keep your comments and your questions coming in. So I have a comment from Kezia Ben Daniel. It's not really a question. It says people in working environment expect to be rewarded or extra for being useful, young people especially. Briefly, what's your take on that?
I agree with her.
Kezia. Yeah,
I agree with her. But one should also realize that not everything is fully transactional.
Right.
And what I mean by that is when you don't quantify everything in terms of money.
Okay.
I worked in the job for 8 years that I enjoyed, but made very little money, right? But what I made was I developed a strong work ethic. I developed capability and knowledge. I built a network. And that is more than any form of compensation my employer at the time could have given me. Do you get me? So it's just beginning to understand the value you place on that usefulness.
And even going the extra mile when you know that you can do it. Just because you're not being paid doesn't mean that you can't offer to do it. And like you said, you walked away with those pointers, which obviously has made you who you are today. And I think, I can definitely see it, in you, especially with the way you're submitting your stuff and even the work that you do currently. So, Kezia, I guess you got that information. So thank you very much for that. Wow. Also, Sunekia, we're almost wrapping up. I think, don't be too worried when there are no questions, because I think, one thing I learned in my training journey was that if you do a delivery and there's not many questions, it means you did a very good job. So don't be too worried about that. Yeah, definitely.
Well, there's a question. I see Akua has asked a question, I think.
She said, we have about 5 minutes. Akua said, what did she say? I can't even
on the topic of mentoring, what's the easiest way you can find a mentor?
Oh, okay.
Akua, it depends on what kind of mentor you're looking for. The easiest way is normally within your organization.
Okay.
Looking at someone who is doing well in an area that you have an interest in, and that's a good place to start, right?
Okay.
And sometimes it's also looking at people that you look up to and probably reaching out to them and kind of talking about their experience. They might not do it in a formal fashion, but just even those conversations are a starting point for you to begin to learn and to begin to understand some of the things that might boggle your mind.
Okay. And I think we've already touched base on the talismanic beauty where she says, I need a mentor. I have a problem with procrastination and fear of failure. I think you touched base on that earlier, saying that, you've got to speak to people that you can trust and share the ideas with them. And obviously you can move on with the goal that you set for yourself. I think that was something that I learned from it.
But also that self-awareness is very good. So the fact that you procrastinate, it's also doing a bit of research and understanding what are little things. And the thing is, even writing down things, right?
Yeah.
And looking at a list might help, right? So just beginning to that self-awareness is a very good starting point.
Fantastic. So Akua, final words to our viewers. Any final words to our viewers?
You had to endure the pain of being the first people to see me on Facebook. On Instagram Live. I've never done this before, so I'm officially.
Yes,
my virginity is officially broken.
Yes.
I have enjoyed the conversation, Jen.
Thank you.
Maybe next time I'll prep a bit differently for this, but it's been insightful. Just kind of talking about some of the questions that you've asked. and
Definitely.
let's do this again.
Fantastic. Yes,
And the
I'll
thing is, we
definitely
want to
hold
stay
you up to
alive,
it.
right?
Yes, we
And we
do.
want to stay alive
Yes,
throughout this. So we should keep safe. We should keep masked
yes,
up, wash
yes,
our hands, and do all the things, and stay home if we have to, right? If we don't
definitely,
have to go out, stay home. Yes.
definitely. Brilliant. Well, Ikea, thank you very much for your time. And definitely we'll bring you back again next time on a different note. But I'm very pleased that you obviously talked to us on exploring opportunities in different dimensions as opposed to what the regular ones we'll be reading on it. So have a good evening with the girls. Enjoy your weekend and we'll speak soon.
Thank you.
Thank you
Right.
very
Speak
much. And
soon.
thank you, my viewers, as well. All right, then. Take care.
Right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.